Good afternoon. Welcome to Space Oddities. Welcome to our live coverage of the Starship Orbital attempt from Boca Chica in Texas. And I'm joined today by Daz. How are you, Daz?
I'm fine, thank you very much. Very excited. Either way, we'll hopefully, fingers crossed, this is going to be a successful launch. Quite a bit depends upon it, especially Artemis. Yeah, fingers crossed. Really looking forward to this. I'm quite excited.
And Daz, you and I have been following the Starship program from the beginning, really. And it's been a long road to get to this potentially, definitely historic day. And we've seen lots and lots of triumphs, equally a lot of failures. But today is the day when the tallest, most powerful rocket ever built is going to go up. It's going to try and get into orbit, and the Starship will separate from the huge B7 booster, fly most of the way around the world, and splash down off the coast of Hawaii. That's the plan for today. At the moment, as you can see, at Boca Chica, they haven't started fueling the vehicle yet. There's some venting going on, but they haven't actually started putting fuel into the rocket yet, and we'll wait and see what happens. The truth is today that nobody knows what's going to happen. There could be a disaster resulting in the whole thing blowing up on the launch pad, which we obviously hope is not going to happen, because that's 4,000 tons of fuel that could go up. We hope, obviously, that's not going to happen. But the truth is, this is a flight test. This is an experimental vehicle. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen this afternoon, which makes it all the more exciting, of course. We don't know exactly what we're going to see. Now, as of last night, the weather forecast was good for today. As you can see there, the weather looks good. But they were, last night, a little concerned about forecast high-altitude winds. And I don't know what's happened about that, but everything seems to be going ahead at the moment. If the launch today has to be cancelled because of winds at high altitude, they have a backup date of tomorrow, presumably at the same time. But we'll keep you posted on that, obviously. So you're excited about today, Daz?
Yeah, I really am. We've got a bit of if they haven't started fueling, it means we've got a bit of a wait. Because it takes approximately 2 hours to fuel it up, so they're going to be towards the end of their window, I should think now.
Yes.
That they will actually do the attempt launch. I mean, I'm not sure exactly where they are in their procedures, but it usually starts at 2 hours before, when the flight director polls for fuel loading. Then we'll get super heavy liquid oxygen and liquid methane loading begins at 1 minute 39. And then you just get Starship methane loading. Then Starship liquid oxygen, of course. Then the super heavy engines. Now we're getting towards the business end. The engine cool down. And then you got other sequences, and then of course then you get the fire up of the engines, and we get liftoff. So
Exactly.
there's a little bit to happen before we do. The flight is, as Andy said, it's a test flight, so anything can happen. Fingers crossed, everything's going to be successful. We know the engines work. Well, at least 31 of them did when they did a test a few weeks back. But we were talking as well, Andy, if you remember the other day, that it's over 2 years since we've actually seen the Starship fly.
Yes, it is a long time
and
last test flight.
do its, yeah, it was during lockdown, and it's just very, very strange that where's the time gone? But those were very, very exciting. It's the same as today. Sorry, I was just looking at the space flight thing, and I could see a countdown, but it's not. It's a count up. It's us. How long we've been on? Sorry, I was getting excited. 4 minutes. Oh, wait, we missed summer. But yeah,
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, but as you said, it's a test flight. It's going to be. It's not actually going to do a full orbit. It's going to do sort of like about 3/4, I think it is, something like that, of an orbit. The booster will. Both these things are going to be expendable. They're both going to end up in the Pacific Ocean, and the booster will land first. Well, will splash down first, but they're actually going to do a controlled landing sort of thing with it. So it's going to be a controlled splashdown. They're going to test the systems to see, to get data. This is all about getting data, and they will be using a controlled splashdown. But the Starship's just going to, I suppose, belly flop. It'll do this belly flop stuff and all that. Again, it's to gather data. And I suppose really they haven't loaded all the fuel into the Starship that it will need to land, so it'll just be a bit lighter and just make things a bit easier for them.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a very exciting day, and hopefully we hope SpaceX are covering the splashdowns, and we will also, if we can, attempt to cover them as well ourselves.
Exactly, but as we said, nobody knows what's going to happen, really. I'd just like to take this opportunity to say hello to all our viewers who've all piled in now. We've got 24 people joining us at the moment, which is fantastic. So thank you for being here. Any questions you have about the Starship, about today's mission, anything at all, put them in the chat. We'll do our very best to answer them. It's great to have you with us to share this very special day. As Alan Ledbury said, this could be the start of the real space age. Today's launch is significant because with the Starship, we could finally have a vehicle that can be used to explore the solar system. So we have to get it up in the air first. And it has been flown before. It's achieved 15 kilometers in altitude and landed safely again. But that's a whole different thing from getting to orbital velocity and altitude, of course. Some of you have said it's not really an orbital flight, is it? Because it will be going it will only be going 90 or 95% of the way around the world. It's still classed as an orbital flight because it will be achieving orbital velocity. So it will actually be in orbit. They would just bring it down before the end of its first orbit. So this is definitely an orbital flight. So we're very happy to have you with us today. And I can see some familiar faces there who are with us today. Ian says you can't hear me very well. Ian, is that any better? Tell me if that's any better, because I can easily change things if it's not. And let's see who else has got there. Oh, Steve's here. Hello, Steve. Hello, Stan. Hello, Ian. Michael's there. Michael unfortunately couldn't be with us in the studio today, but he's there in spirit at least. Hello, Heidi. How are you? Nice to see you back. Hello, Stan. Hello, Roger. And Roger's there as well in the chat. So please, if you do have any questions, just put them in the chat. Now, just in case you're not aware of why this launch is significant, it's significant because, as I said, the Starship is a revolutionary vehicle. Nothing like it has ever been seen before. But one of the main reasons it's so revolutionary is because it is reusable. And the big barrier to getting stuff into space has always been the prohibitive cost of each kilogram of weight that you fly into orbit. The Starship is achieving a much, much lower cost, much cheaper than anybody else can offer, simply by being reusable. And the more often you reuse a vehicle, of course, the cheaper the cost is. And to your clients, the more it comes down. And SpaceX are the first company to really crack the whole business of reusable space vehicles. As we know, they've had 120, I think, successive launches of the Falcon 9, the first stage of the Falcon 9. They've really got that off to an art now. When it first started, we were absolutely amazed that they could land the first stage of a rocket after it went into orbit. And now we don't even think twice about it. It's nothing special now. SpaceX have had an amazing success record launching rockets and returning them to the Earth. You may remember the maiden flight of the Falcon Heavy, when those twin rockets landed side by side on the launch pad, which I think was the highlight of that mission. Putting a car into space, Elon Musk thought would be the highlight, the one that everybody would remember. But what everybody remembers about that mission is the twin side boosters landing side by side autonomously on the rocket pad. So this is why it's so significant. If it's true that we can explore the solar system using reusable vehicles, the cost of doing that will come down enormously. And as I said, nobody else has got that technology at the moment. And Bernard says he's watching between meetings. Why can't these US launches be done outside of European office hours? I agree with you, Bernard. Daz and I were actually saying before we went live today how inconsiderate it is of the Americans.
I'm writing to my MP.
Yeah. So here we are. At least it's in the afternoon here, which is not so bad because I'm an hour ahead of you. So I thought what we'd do at the moment, I've got a video to show you, which CNET have put together, and it's all about the history of the starships and what each one has done. So for the next 10 minutes, sit back and relax while we wait for things to start happening at Boca Chica. Here is a video about the Starship project.
4.5 minutes, we are heading off to the LOX tank. We are beginning to flip to horizontal. And the white cloud, the plume you were seeing, was intentional. That is a liquid oxygen dump. We've now transitioned to horizontal and beginning the subsonic test portion of the flight, where we check out the aft and the forward flaps to hold the vehicle stability as we descend back to the landing pad. We're down beneath 1.5 kilometers. We're preparing to restart 2 engines, flip the vehicle vertical, and transition to 1 engine for the landing burn.
altitude.
Past 1 minute into flight, we're through 2 kilometers altitude. All 3 Raptor engines continuing to burn. Next major event, about 1 minute, is we will turn off the first of the 3 Raptor engines. Past T plus 4 minutes into flight. We've got the views back from the Raptor engines. In T plus 4 minutes 34 seconds, while we're working to regain video, it looks like we've got a shot looking back at the flaps on Starship. We're in the horizontal descent phase now. We're passing 6 kilometers. A reminder, phase that's coming up as we get ready for landing, we will light 3 Raptor engines, flip the vehicle from horizontal to vertical. If things look good, we will shut down 1 Raptor engine and then possibly a second one and land on a single engine. And we have ignition. And Starbase Flight Control has confirmed, as you can see on the live video, we are down. The Starship has landed. We're going through the safing sequence in the flight computer right now. We'll be back in a moment.
And there we have it. That was a video about the history of the starships and the various prototypes and what happened to them. As you saw, the last flight of the Starship, which was nearly 2 years ago now, as Daz said, was the SN-15, which was the first one to achieve a soft landing and not explode. And it was rumored at the time that SpaceX were going to try again with the same Starship SN-15 and launch it again, but that never happened. So this is the first Starship flight in just about 2 years. I'd like to welcome to the studio Michael. How are you, Michael?
Hi there. Well, very well, thank you. How are you
Good,
all?
good. Thank you for joining us. We do have a revised flight time,
Yeah.
which is 2:20 UK time,
Yeah.
2:20 British Summer Time. And so they put it back a bit, but you know, as we said, nobody knows what's going to happen today, and this is to be expected.
Yeah.
The good thing is that things appear to be progressing at Starbase, as you can see there. Coverage from NASA spaceflight. There was some venting going on earlier, but that was probably just clearing out the lines with some nitrogen gas, and we're waiting for them to start fueling the vehicle. And Daz, you were saying it takes about 2 hours to fuel the vehicle?
2 hours from the very beginning, but as I said, that was with from the very start when they actually asked for a no-go situation to the loadings. But I have noticed that Mike Astrakumari says propellant. Oh, it's disappeared now. Propellant loading has started.
Right. We're on the way.
There's frost forming on B7 tanks. So yeah. So hopefully we've started that. We've moved into it. So I've lost my timeline now. Let me just have a look. So we've probably about if we've got frost forming, we're already sort of like 25-30 minutes into the loading sequence.
Wonderful.
But like I said, this is all guesstimate because SpaceX, unlike NASA or anyone else, they don't actually give a precise timeline of when things will happen. Yeah, it's. But this is what the timeline I got here is sort of like a guesstimate of what's actually going to happen at what times and stuff like that. But that may vary. So please don't take it as read. So, but I'm just saying about that clip you just showed, Andy, which reminded me of exciting times. Really did. It was literally on the edge of your seat job. That was when we used to watch those. I can remember on the last couple, I'd have about 5 different screens, all different things all up, and I'd have it on the big telly and everything from all the streams that were going at the time. So I had all angles. But yeah, it was. But also SN10, I think it was the one that landed, and then after 8 or 10 minutes exploded. Did prove that Starship can fly twice. So yeah,
yes.
So we know it's reusable.
Yes. Got a question here in the chat from Karen, and Karen said, "What height and velocity is it expected to reach today?" Well, Karen, actually, as far as I know, SpaceX have not actually said what heights they're going for, but in terms of velocity, it is an orbital flight, so it will achieve, if all goes well, a speed of 17,500 miles an hour. That's about 26,000 kilometers per hour. and this is the speed you need to attain orbit. So that's how fast it'll be going. As regards the altitude, we don't exactly know. And as far as I know, techs have actually said when they intend to, what height they are going for. That's not actually in the flight plan. So we will we'll hopefully find out a bit later. Let's hope, as Elon Musk says, that he sees getting off the launch pad today as a major success. So anything after that is a bonus. So we'll wait and see. Now, guys, you're going to have to excuse me for just a few minutes, because my PC is slowing down dramatically. So I'm going to try restarting my PC.
Yeah.
So I will join you very shortly. Okay.
Okay then. Yeah. As regards the altitude, it is expected to reach about 146 miles, which is 234 kilometers.
There we are.
And then it will splash down 140 miles, which is 225 kilometers from the coast of Oahu. I'm sorry if I've got that wrong, Hawaii. The Super Heavy booster will meanwhile make its own return trip to splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico, actually.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Oh, yes.
About 20 miles. Yeah. 32 kilometers from Boca Chica. So they fit in the oh, excuse me. Oh, dear me. The Gulf of Mexico. Then they probably will have coverage of that. So that'll be exciting to see that return. So yeah, it's exciting news. Exciting news. So
okay, I will be back shortly.
Okay.
Okay then, mate. Anyway, I forgot to say hello, Michael.
Hello, Daz. I'd like to mention our audience today. Just been looking at the audience on YouTube, and my count went up to 72 people watching a few moments ago. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it is strange. I'm reading 62 at the moment, which is very good for an afternoon, a Monday afternoon. So it's welcome everybody. It's lovely to see you. As everybody's been pointing out, this is a historical day. Fingers crossed, everything will go right. The start of a new space age.
Welcome back to a few members we haven't seen there for a while. By the look of it as well. So that's good.
Yeah. There must be a lot of sickies going on, or people hiding in cupboards to watch the coverage, so the boss doesn't catch them. I know Rachel is on her lunch hour, so hopefully she'll be able to stay with us. I don't know if you saw, Michael. I posted on in Messenger and Discord a rough timeline of what's going to happen today, which will be a bit helpful. It's Rachel says something. It's Johnny's school. Johnny's being Rachel's husband. So I think they're all watching. So that'll be if the children are watching, welcome, and hope you're enjoying this. What was the chap's? There was somebody else there who's got a 6-year-old son watching. Unfortunately, he's got chicken pox, but he's got a bonus of being able to watch this. He's very excited. Well, tell you now, he's not the only one.
Exactly.
Just bear with me a second. Yeah, okay. We've been following these for, as we said, it's been 2 years since we the last Starship fly and landing can't even say it now, successfully. And we've been following this throughout its development. And we've had some interesting explosions. And as I said, SN10 did land, but it was a bit of a hard landing. And after 8 minutes and a small fire, it launched itself again, but in a big boom. Now, when they have these accidents, they're called RUDs.
Nice.
They're random, unscheduled dismantling. So they're not scheduled to do this, so they call them RUDs. It's quite a funny thing. But yes, today, as we said, we've started loading, from what we understand. So it's exciting times. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, it's absolutely it's absolutely is, because ultimately this system is planned eventually. First of all, it's going to be part of the Artemis program, or a version of it is going to be part of the Artemis program to go to the moon. And eventually, we could see it go to Mars, with a number of flights to get a small colony there, which is what the hope of SpaceX and Elon Musk is. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, as you said, it's Artemis with the moon landings.
Yeah.
We're expecting that. What are we on there? We're Apollo. Apollo. Oh, look, I'm showing me age now. Artemis.
Yes.
Artemis 3 will be taken at the first landers to the moon. Was it 4?
It is. Artemis 3 is still the proposal to take humans to the surface. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I believe that would be with the Starship variant.
Yeah, because the Starship will. So this depends upon success today.
Yeah.
Moving it forward, the actual lunar Starship that will do the landing will not be returning to Earth. It will actually stay in orbit around the moon, and also once it's done, it's taken the astronauts down to the lunar surface and back up again.
Yeah.
Also, the lunar walk-in suits that they'll be using will also be discarded and left on the Starship.
Yeah.
And that's because the moon station that they will be eventually building, which will be a permanent fixture orbiting around the moon, will not have been built by then. So they will have nowhere really to store these suits to return them. And that's basically because they'll be returning with samples.
Yeah.
So
you'll remember on the Apollo, they had to be very careful with the weight of the lunar samples that they took and brought back. And that was said very, very, very good on Apollo 13, because they actually said we're going to be bringing so many kilograms of lunar soil back. So they didn't have the right weight as what they expected. So they had to change things. That
is correct. As you said, their trajectory was wrong coming back because of they didn't have the weight, so they had to transfer some of the weight from the lunar lander, which was their lifeboat.
Yeah.
It being like I said, moving all the stuff that they could over just to get the weight back.
Right.
Yeah, because with the Apollo moon landings, the spacesuits, the spacesuits that the astronauts wore, and the pressurized spacesuits, were the same suits that they wore on the moonwalk. The only thing that they didn't bring back is they had some over covers for their shoes.
Right.
Which they removed, and they were left on there. So each Apollo landing site on the moon, there is a little a pile of rubbish, which they all had to leave behind, which of course included cameras, virtually anything that wasn't bolted down, so that they could bring back as much moon rock as possible. And of course, that moon rock is still being studied today.
Exactly, scientists are still looking at the moon rock, and ultimately they'll be comparing it with any of the rock samples that the asteroid probe brings back. That sort of thing. Comparing it with that, and doing radiocarbon dating and that sort of thing to compare it, and other spectroscopy work, I suppose. So that'd be good. It's but I'm just thinking about Apollo again. Quite quite a number of the things that were left behind. And you mentioned cameras there. There are a number of Hasselblad cameras on the moon. How they would be now after 50 years of sunlight, sun radiation. I don't know.
You say that because also there's a couple of moon rovers, isn't there?
Right, yeah. Actually 3 moon rovers, Apollo 15, 16 and 17 at the rover.
Yeah, I mean, so if they want to go for a bit of a joyride, they're still up there.
Right.
If they're in any state. I think there is a plan at some time to visit some of the landing sites and to see how these things have fared.
I do hope.
So with the
I do hope so. I know it's been mentioned several times in science fiction stories, and I do hope that does happen at some point in the future. Yeah. Yeah.
So it was like I said, the moon landings then were almost the same as what we're going to expect this time. It's going to be all samples, but the main difference is that the this especially the first landing is going to be on the South Pole region,
that's right.
Whereas all the other Apollo landings were around the equator.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, because of course they're going to be looking for water ice.
Yeah.
In the craters, because of course the bottom of some of these deep craters never see the sunlight. So we know the ice is there.
Yeah.
We found it before. So it's just basically to find out the quantity and also the makeup of the regolith in the soil there, because as we said, the South Pole is what I call old rock.
Yeah.
Whereas what we normally see when we look at the moon, we see the dark areas, which they call the mare, which is French for seas.
Yeah.
They're new land, if you understand it. They're a new surface because they're all volcanic from the lake bombardment. But the bottom, you can see all the small craters.
Yeah.
So that tells us that it's the old from when originally formed. So be interesting.
The thing about going to the South Pole, or any of the poles, either of the poles, of course, is that the Earth will actually be on the horizon. Unlike the Apollos, where any picture that shows the Earth, there's that iconic picture of the American flag, which is actually, it looks like it's pointing to the Earth, because the camera was pointing upwards to the flag to get the Earth in. And I think that's one of the most iconic pictures. And of course, on the South Pole, the Earth will actually be on the horizon, which is how it, again in science fiction, it's how any base on the moon has been depicted for a long time. So yeah.
So it's so I'm just scanning through the chat. See if we
I've just seen one from Alan Kennedy asking about the reason given for the delay. It's not actually a delay, is it? It's just that we didn't know exactly what time the launch was.
Because we were hoping, because the window opened at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And we didn't know whether or not they would be already started the refueling. I mean I say refueling, the fueling. And it takes from start to finish approximately two-ish hours. But for the last, I reckon we're probably about nearly an hour, possibly.
Yeah.
Probably not quite an hour into these. They've already started fueling, but so we're still looking at probably an hour or so before we get to the exciting bits when they start lighting things and and things go boom. So there's no actual delay. They probably pushed. They can push the launch time any time within that launch window, which is 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
So it's from 1 o'clock to 3:30.
Okay.
We said the flight time's going to be 1 hour and a half for the final Starship to crash down into the sea just off of Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's welcome back, Andy. How are you?
Thank you. Hope you can hear me okay.
We can.
So,
yeah, lovely. Thank you.
They're taken off yet? Are we there
No,
yet?
Another question
No,
from Chris.
they've cancelled it, Andy. It's cancelled. It's scrubbed.
Yeah. Another question from Chris: are both elements expected to land and be reused? No, it's a one-way. It is a one-way trip, I believe, for both.
Yeah, for both parts. As we said earlier, Chris, the booster will do a soft splashdown. They're going to use this as an opportunity to, as if it was going to land on the land, back at base. But they're going to do a soft landing into the Gulf of Mexico. But then the upper stage, the actual Starship itself, will just do an uncontrolled splashdown into the sea off of Hawaii. I'm assuming they will do the belly flop maneuver just to gain data on that, but there will be no firing of rockets to slow it down. But they are both expendable on this one event. And it's all to collect data, and this is what testing's all about: is data. This thing will be packed with things monitoring everything, measuring everything, and pressures, temperatures, and angles, and everything. So it's going to be an exciting time. I'm not sure. I should think we're nearly sort of like about almost an hour into the fueling thing. So things are moving. I haven't heard anything different. So
no, I think.
Have you heard anything, Andy?
No, I haven't heard anything to the contrary. And as far as I'm aware, things are going ahead. SpaceX's live coverage is going to start shortly, according to their timetable. So we'll just wait and see. Karen says, any idea how much today's launch is costing Mr. Musk? Well, I don't think it's costing Mr. Musk anything, because it's SpaceX.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think SpaceX are paying for this, of course, and SpaceX is funded by the business that they do with their clients. So this is where the money comes from. So this actual launch is not costing Mr. Musk anything. Not that he would be too bothered, of course, even if it did, because he has got the money. But no, this is funded by SpaceX. We don't know the cost of the launch. That's something that SpaceX have not ever revealed. But in the future, the aim is to get the cost of each Starship launch down to $2 million. And when you consider how much, for example, NASA's SLS rocket, the one that is going to take us back to the moon, has a price tag of $4 billion per launch. That is a hell of a difference. It was what I was saying earlier. Because these rockets will be reusable, the cost of launching each one comes down so dramatically. The cost of getting a kilogram of weight into orbit, or should I say a kilogram of mass to be technical, goes down dramatically as well. So $4 billion for NASA in the future, $2 million for SpaceX. And
because we've said before about the reusability. It seems that NASA are way behind the curve. I know they're now talking about, we are going to be looking at reusability, and possibly they've just successfully flown a inflatable re-entry shield, heat shield, and they are going to be hoping to utilize that to bring some of these boosters and that back safely so that they can be reused. The people who are really big into it are the Chinese. They've successfully two companies have successfully launched prototypes. I must say they're prototypes. They're sort of like a bit on the par of the SpaceX Hopper, but they have flown them successfully and they've landed them successfully. And of course, we have got Blue Origin's New Shepard, but that seems to have been kicked into the long grass for the minute because they're still investigating the failure they had going back some time now. Yes, and there are people who've got space planes that they're looking at, things like that. So we're in the very exciting times, and it looks though it's going to be With this being a success, this is a big jump forward.
Yes.
And it'll start a new space age. As Andy said earlier, this Starship will eventually be taking us to Mars.
Yes.
And also, can I just say, going back to the early days of SpaceX, when they were testing the Falcon 1 in the island in an island in the Pacific, it was they were having a number of problems with that, but even we must thank NASA, I suppose, for giving them the contract to do the commercial resupply for the ISS. So I think basically that contract basically saved SpaceX from, disaster.
Definitely. Just one thing I did want to say. Jonathan earlier said that he's got a class or two watching today, and they may field us some questions. So please, if you want any questions, put them in the chat. We love answering your questions, and we especially welcome especially welcome questions from youngsters. So if you're a teacher out there and you've got children watching, please give us the questions. We'd love to answer them for the children.
You've just doomed us, Andy. You know what questions children ask? Yeah. They'll be far above our head, far above our pay grade.
Well, you speak yourself. So yes, if please, any questions, put them in the chat. And while we're just waiting for SpaceX to start their live coverage, so we might get a better idea of what's going on, if you would like to support Space Oddities by buying us a coffee, then we'd be very grateful, because we live on coffee, and coffee is what drives Space Oddities, and it's our rocket fuel. So if you would like to support us, just scan the QR code that you see on the screen at the moment, and we'd be very grateful, because the money that you give us, well, obviously doesn't go to coffee. It goes towards keeping Space Oddities going and covering our costs, and any donations in the form of buy me a coffee you would like to make us would be gratefully appreciated. And there we are. So I'll leave that on the screen for a little bit longer. And thank you very much. We've all been touched by the generosity so far of our viewers who have helped us keep Space Oddities going. And it also enables us to expand and do bigger and better things in the future, which is what we want to do. So don't forget, if it's happening in space, it's happening here, the only place you need to be. So so there we are.
I did see in the chat somewhere, I can't find it now, but there was something about the Saturn V, where are we? The Starship being more powerful than Saturn V.
That's right. It's nearly twice as powerful, in fact, in terms of thrust.
Yeah. Because what you've got to remember is we're using different types of engines as well, really. Right. The Saturn V's were massive engines. They were, I think, probably about 13 feet high. Big, massive things. Michael doing his fisherman impression there. But they ran on kerosene and oxygen. The thrust on them was absolutely unbelievable. That's why they were able to use 5. We are using today, hopefully, 33 Raptor engines. They're all smaller, but the overall thrust will be, as Andy said, twice as much as the Saturn V, and also it will be more powerful than the SLS as well. But of course, today we're using methane and oxygen. I think it is, isn't it? Methane and oxygen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as a fuel. So, but we have. Sorry, I was just going to say we do have a comparison. If you know, I think we were going to talk about. We could probably talk a bit more about it later. But we have seen a rocket with this many engines before. Not quite. We've got 33. It had 30 engines, and it was the Russian N1 rocket, which was basically their answer to the Saturn V rocket to take cosmonauts to the moon. Now, they only built 10 of them, and I think only 3 of them flew. The first attempt Unfortunately, they had, like I said, they had 30 engines based in the bottom. Now, whereas the Starship looks like a nice lean pencil with a point at the top and some nice fins, something out of sci-fi books, the N1 looked like an upturned ice cream cone. It was much, much thicker at the bottom and very thin at the top. It was, I think the ones that they made were only sort of like prototypes, so they were only 3 stages. The final thing was going to be 5 stages. Some flew. Thank you for that. I haven't got the paperwork with me. Thank you for that. But I think it was the first one, N5, I think it was, the one that they first tried to launch, exploded on the actually on the pad. And at the time, it produced the biggest non-nuclear man-made explosion. Let me just find. 5L destroyed, and basically it completely destroyed the launch pad. But we don't expect to see this today. The others did launch, but they had to be destroyed in flight. And one of them shut down completely on the pad as well. So yeah, it was there was only 10 of them made. I think if you go to Bocanor, whereas they launch these things, there are still sections of this lying around the station, and they use them for storage. So there you go.
Yeah.
But that was it. So we have seen something similar to this with that many engines. I don't know whether I could compare. Let me just see. I've found me paperwork. Just seeing what the.
We can see on the screen there that fueling is well underway.
That's great. That's great. Great news.
Yes, indeed. So
I'm going to get a drink and a sandwich if you don't mind. So I'll be back shortly.
Okay, Michael.
Okay.
So as you can see, both fuel tanks are showing frost at the bottom and sort of halfway up. Judging by that, both boosters are about half full, but they are still targeting in about 50 minutes for the actual launch time. So we've got that to look forward to. But so far at Starbase, everything appears to be progressing normally. The rocket is fueling, and we're waiting with bated breath to see what happens next. And there we are. Have you found it, Daz?
Yeah, I was just trying to compare. I can't find on the Starship what the thrust is on the booster stage. On the N1, it produced 100,000 pound force on launch.
Mm-hmm.
This is old stuff. This is, yes. But as I said, it looked like an upturned ice cream cone.
Yeah.
But in the end, of course, because of the failures, they did scrap it in the end. Although most of them did scrap themselves. Right, bit of a comparison here. Yeah, it's. I'm just looking at the height of the thing. It's the Saturn V was 110.6 meters, whereas the Starship is 120 meters. The SLS is 111.3 meters. So in height, here we are. I've just found something about the H1. The H1 was 109.5 meters.
Yes.
So it's on par with these things. But this, as we said, is the tallest and the most powerful that will be going. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, we are fueling well, aren't we?
Very well at the moment. Yes, indeed. Yes, so we are looking still at a launch time of around 14:15 UK time. and we hope you'll stay with us for that. I've been asked to give a shout out to Bassakar Primary School. If you're watching, guys, we would love to see questions. So please do send those questions in, and we'll do our very best to answer them. Some questions have no answer.
And hello Annabelle. They've just done their register and they're watching this.
Fantastic.
We can't give you a time for the launch because being a test flight, things can vary. But we'll keep you notified. As you can see, we've started refueling. You can see the ice forming on the bottom stage. So we're well into it now.
But we do.
So it's going to be with.
So we do.
Sorry, Andy.
Be around in about 45 minutes, give or take. I think that's correct. And Paul, if you're watching, I've just mailed you a link. So come on in. Oh, in fact, he's already here. Let me just let Paul into the studio.
Oh.
Good afternoon, Paul.
No, I see Karim's here as well on YouTube. So great, thank you. Welcome, Karim.
Hello, Paul. Can you hear us?
Hi, guys. How's it going? Isn't it exciting?
It's very exciting. Thank you for joining us, Paul. Lovely of you to share this moment with us. It's all looking good at the moment, as we can see. Things appear to be going ahead as planned, and we will have to wait and see what happens. But at the moment, everything looks good.
Ian, I'm assuming this is the launch time is 14:20-ish.
Yes.
I always put an ish on the end.
Yes.
So, ish.
But,
with Elon, you never know.
Of course, there may be a few built-in holds in the countdown while they pause and take stock and check everything. We don't know. But at the moment, it looks as though we're going ahead with the launch in about 45 to 50 minutes. So there we are. And I just keep having to flip between my time zone and yours, and it gets confusing, even though I've done it a million times. But it's quite.
Because we're looking at Sorry, Andy. We're looking at 14:20 now for a liftoff. I'll just run through the actual what will happen during the flight. So, of course, at T minus.
Just before you do that, Daz.
Oh, sorry.
Paul, what are your thoughts about this afternoon?
Well, it's fantastic, really, isn't it? This probably one of my favourite Apollo missions was Apollo 4, which I was very young at the time, but in the sort of my retrospective analysis of what happened before Apollo 8 when I came in, Apollo 4 was the all up test of the Saturn V, and this is kind of the same thing, only bigger, and it's and it's really the first go apart from we talked about the N1 a bit earlier. The N1 was a bigger thing than Apollo, but not as big as this.
No.
And so this is kind of it's over 50 years since the first time anything this big was launched.
Indeed.
And it is quite amazing to see, and I just hope it all goes off well and it's a successful mission. We just keep the fingers crossed, but that there's a lot of scope for little things to go wrong. That I think in the age in which we live, that they are much more cautious than they used to be, shall we say? And
yes, indeed.
And for example, I mean the thing with Apollo that amazed me. And it's a different time. They launched Apollo 4 in 1967, which was an unmanned mission, but that tested out every part of the rocket, and it was a complete success. And then they did Apollo 6, which was just the second Saturn V, and that nearly shook itself to bits and would probably have killed astronauts if they were on it. And yet at that time they said, yeah, but we know why, and we can sort that. So they just put 3 men on Apollo 8, the next one. And I don't think they'd necessarily be that gung ho about it now. I think if there are problems with the mission, then there's probably a lot more thinking and further testing to go before it becomes a manned craft. But this obviously is the first one, and we'll look at it and find out how it all works, and hope it all goes well, of course.
Yeah, of course, Paul. When you were talking about the shaking, that was the infamous pogoing, wasn't it? What they referred to as the pogoing. Yeah, where the fuel was sloshing around. It was take the fillings out your teeth.
Yeah, I liken that. I've talked about Apollo so many times now, but pogo I sort of liken to when you're a learner driver, and you get the car going and you panic and you take your foot off the accelerator and then you put it back, and you end up kangarooing down the road. It's kind of like that, isn't it?
Yes,
yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. So, but anyway, Daz, tell us more or less exactly what we're expecting to happen today.
Well, of course, once it launches off, and that's at T-0, you'll get your lift off. Now, we're all really excited to see this. 55 seconds, Starship Super Heavy will reach max Q. Now, that's the point at where the whole rocket will be under maximum pressure from the acceleration and things like that. 2 minutes 49, you get the Super Heavy main engine cut off. 2 minutes 53 seconds, you'll get stage separation. Excuse me. 2 minutes 57, Starship engine ignition. Then we've got 3 minutes 11, you'll have the Super Heavy boost back burn. That's when it's going to start to return itself back to Earth. 7 minutes 32, you have the Super Heavy is transonic. 7:40, Super Heavy will do its landing burn. Now, as we said, this is a splashdown. It's not actually going to land, but it will be a controlled splashdown. And this is to gain data for when it does actually return to land and lands back at base and that. And then 8:03, you have Super Heavy landing burn shutdown. Of course, that we said was it's going to be a splashdown. Then 9 minutes 20, Starship engine cut off. So that's been running for quite some time, almost over 7 minutes. And then 1 hour 17, 21 seconds, Starship will do re-entry. 1 minute 28 minutes 43 seconds, Starship itself is transonic. And then 1 minute 30, Starship will splash down, and that'll be just off the coast of Hawaii. So that's what we'll be looking forward to once this thing takes off. Hello, is somebody there?
Yeah, it's still looking good, isn't it? They haven't slipped that time any further yet. So
no, I mean it looks like the booster section is well on its way to being filled. I can't see although there is some venting on the Starship, I think we're just beginning to see the start of a frost line on the actual Starship itself. So they've started fueling that, hopefully. So yes, we're well into this now. We're getting well onto it. So they've actually put a timeline up. I've just noticed.
Yeah, that's looking good, isn't it?
So they're all the way down to. I'll have to have a quick look now.
Well, they're actually loading the oxygen into it now, so it looks like they've actually put the fuel in, and they're on the oxygen. Is that right? Is that my?
Yeah. So usually the methane goes first, and then the oxygen second. So, right. So let's just make this bigger so I can actually see it. Right.
42 minutes and still counting. So
yeah, there is definitely a frost line on the Starship. You can see it well now. Well, I can. I've just made the screen bigger on YouTube, so you can actually see what's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, so things are moving on. Things are moving on fast now. So we just change the 720 quality. There you go. Yeah, so things are moving fast. According to this, we've got about 40 odd minutes to go, so that's fine. So that will put us,
okay.
Yeah, around about 2:30ish. 2:30ish.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Guys, I don't know if you've talked about this before I came on, but is there a sort of a plan for what happens if this works just fine? They plan that out.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think it's a case of that everybody just wants to get this thing off the ground.
Yeah.
And of course, if it's successful, it's going to mean so much in advancement. I mean, Artemis is, like we said before, is relying upon Starship. But what the plan forward is actually, I've seen nothing to say that, well, if this is I suppose that they're not just, they're not hedging their bets. They're just, they're going to see how they could do. And of course, this is what, like we said at the beginning, this is a test flight and it's all about data. And once they receive the data from the booster, from the Starship, then they can plan their head forward, because they may have to, if there's any sort of failures, they will have to look at, which could change any timelines that they've planned. But I did hear that I think the second booster and everything is already in the manufacturing stage.
Yep, indeed.
So they are still moving ahead. But of course, anything that happens after this depends upon what happens today in the data. So I don't think we'd have to wait long before we'll get a plan ahead. So
because it is an exciting time, isn't it? Really, when you look at how this is. I mean, we went through that sort of period of when there was a lull in activity post shuttle, and which in 2011, and then it's only really the last sort of 2 or 3 years that America has even had any method of getting anything into space at all, really, and because they were relying on the Russians for Soyuz seats at some huge amount of money, weren't they, for a long time? And
that's right, yeah, because they started off quite cheap, but then they learned, hang on, we can make a bit of a dosh here. So the price actually went up. Ian's just put in the chat, he says, daft question. There's never a daft question. What difference does a larger thrust make? Surely you need only so much. Well, it's all to do with payloads. The more thrust you got, the more you can lift. And this is quite a, it's got to be a heavy beast, even just the height of it. And of course, it's all sort of like stainless steel and things like that. So thrust gives you how much, yes, as Space Oddities just puts, larger thrust, more lifting power. So you'll be able to lift heavier payloads into space. So that's the whole idea of behind thrust. And Alan Ledbury has, would actually be right, because I did think that when I mentioned the Apollo 5 thrust, was that what I was talking about? Yeah, I think it was Apollo. He says that launch, it was the thrust was between 400 tons, and this is 700 tons. So thank you for that, Alan. So your memory is a lot better than mine. I must admit, I was only about 7 anyway at the time, so that's my excuse. And also old age has caught up with me. So yeah. So. Yeah, it's as Paul said, very, very exciting, and we've got 2 nice frost lines. Things are progressing.
That's
lovely.
Good. What's interesting to see about this one, actually, I would say, is that is how quickly it actually moves off the pad. Because with the Saturn V, the actual, it was 7.5 million pounds of thrust, which probably is about 4,000 tons. Thinking about it, but it moved away very slowly initially because there was 6.5 million pounds of rocket and fuel on top of it, and to gain acceleration, exactly. It had to start burning that fuel and getting lighter. And it's just interesting to see what the excess of thrust over the weight of the thing is when this goes off, whether it goes off slowly or whether it goes off quickly. The shuttles went off noticeably much more quickly than the Saturn V's.
Yeah, well, those I don't know if you saw the Juice launch the other day. They launched the main booster engines, but as soon as they lit those solid fuel boosters, which gives it its main thrust, it just shot off the pad. It was gone, and that's why they use them on the SLS. The engines they use them for those, of course, were the X-Shuttle engines, and they're nowhere as powerful as Saturn V rockets, so they needed that extra boost. But once those solid fuel boosters are lit, that thing was out of there. It was gone, and it was fascinating to watch. So yeah. It's as you said, the Saturn V used to, because I can always remember, and I love seeing those launch pad images where you see the base, and then you see the Saturn V engines emerge from the pit, and you can see the solid thrust. I mean, it's just absolutely pure magic. But it's just getting. They've just got an infographic up. So
and that's the thing with those doing it with solid rocket boosters, of course, is that what you effectively do is you fire the second stage first to make sure it works, don't you? And then you fire what is really the first stage, i.e., a solid rocket booster.
I see what you mean. Because if you remember with the Saturn, with the space shuttle. When you saw the close-up pictures of the gantry with the space shuttle on it, when it fired its own booster engines, it used to tilt, if you remember, and then it used to have to come back to the vertical before it could actually lift off, and then they'd fire the solid boosters. I can always remember that tilt, and heart used to be in your mind. Oh, where is it going to stop?
6 seconds, wasn't it, between the firing of the rockets and the boosters?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the solid boosters, once you've lit them, that's it. You're not going to stop them. They're going. But they are so powerful. And as I said, we saw that with the Juice launch the other day on the Ariane 5. That was fantastic. That was, again, another perfect launch.
One of those urban myths, isn't there, about a gentleman who strapped a solid rocket booster to his car and discovered that there was no off switch.
I can imagine how that ended. Is that Cliff Richards at the spaceport singing? Oh no, it's not Cliff Richards. Yes, he's doing his Wimbledon act again.
Not going to summer holidays. Oh.
Well, we're coming down to the half-hour point, so we'll see if it holds there or if it carries on.
Yeah, I get to. Right.
Andy's just put, "Can you hear me?" in the chat. Yes.
I can't hear Andy at the moment. No. He's trying. Can you hear me, Mother? Yeah, so we're getting into this now.
Looking good.
Right, we've got the countdown now is at T34, the 40 seconds, so that's coming on nicely. We don't want to see that clock stopping.
That's the thing we've got to watch out for. Probably at the 30-minute thing will be a good milestone to get past, won't it?
Yeah. I see Andy's popped out, so he's probably going to rejoin.
Hi, Paul. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm as fascinated as the rest of us on this, and it is an amazing day in history, isn't it? Really, to the next big step forward as a bigger rocket than a Saturn V. That's I thought I'd never see that. I thought that was going to be the biggest successfully launched rocket.
Talking of size, I was thinking about the shuttle again, and you mentioned the solid rocket boosters. The solid rocket boosters for the shuttle and, of course, SMS are the size they are because they're built a few hundred miles away across country, and they have to travel across country by railway, by barge, or whatever, and they have to go pass through various structures on the route. But Starship, I take it, is actually built on site, and the booster, the super heavy booster is built on site. So
the solid boosters are still made some way off.
Yeah.
And then it's assembled nearer the site. Whereas before
I believe it's in Utah where they actually build the SRBs.
So that leads to the question: do these solid rocket boosters have the O-ring problem, where it's built in?
As far as I know, they still use the same system, Paul. Yeah. And what it was with the shuttle, if I can say, that there was a lot of political pressure on NASA and people that build the shuttle, and that virtually every state in the US wanted a part of the system, so that they could earn basically dollars for each state. On the shuttle, and that has carried over to the SLS.
Yes.
That's the only way that senators, or whatever they're called, their version of the RMPs, would actually back the program, basically. So they wanted to carry on.
This all goes back to, doesn't it? There was a lengthy explanation of how the dimensions of the solid rocket booster, when you trace it all back, as you say, coming on railways and through tunnels and all that sort of thing. When you trace it all back, it comes back to the Romans, doesn't it? And the width of their carriages that carved ruts in the roads in England, and so the rail carriage people adopted the same dimensions of the carriages, which determined the 4'8" and whatever. 4'8" and something, isn't it?
4'8.5" inches.
That's the one, yeah. between the wheels
as an ex-railwayman.
and that actually defined.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, Paul, the O-ring. They, of course, we know what happened, and we won't go into detail. But that's you got two O-rings, the primary, and then you got the backup O-ring, and but they did know earlier flights from Challenger that they did have problems with gases passing the primary O-ring, and they also on a couple of the flights where the temperature wasn't as cold on the Challenger day, it had passed through, and there was scorching on the second ring. But they already knew about that, and unfortunately, once the accident had happened, they went through a whole new process where they rectified that, and it virtually eliminated it on the next the space shuttle flights after that. So it was a fault. It's a long story, and as Michael said, there was political pressure for them to launch. The whole thing was it left unfortunately a stain on NASA's reputation.
And of course, with 51L, of course, it was the actual public pressure as well, because it was the Teacher in Space project.
Yeah, I mean that was to try and garner people to come back and support it. Of course, just before the Challenger flight, we'd had two senators fly in space, one of them being Bill Nelson, and I can't remember the name of the other chap at the moment, to sort of like boost the viewing figures. So I'm just looking at the chat on YouTube, and they've gone into song mode. I think Rachel's to blame for this, because she started with Rick Ashley. We're never going to launch you up, never going to launch you down, never going to refuel. But now they've all started off with all the space songs.
There's a good
countdown.
There's a good one in the chat actually that Mike Astronaut Cymru points out that they're only going to run the engines at 90% on this launch, so actually may not be quite as quick off the pad as we were thinking.
Well, I'm assuming then probably the reason they're doing that is because there's not any payloads really on there.
Oh, that's true.
You've only got the Starship, so and of course if they can do it at 90%, then we'll be well away.
So are the engines throttleable like the shuttle engines, like the SLS?
This is the Raptor engine.
These because weren't I may be wrong in this, but weren't the the Saturn V engines, weren't they referred to as dumb engines because they didn't actually do anything? They couldn't be controlled as such. Because I could be wrong on that. Yeah, I think they were sort of like a bit on par with the solid booster rockets.
Never heard the term go for throttle up on Saturn V launch.
Oh, you didn't know?
No, that's what I was just thinking. Something just crossed my mind. It's
there's a lot of songs going in the chat.
yeah. We must be boring them, but it's our equivalent to a Mexican wave when people are bored. So yeah, I see we've lost Andy again. I hope he can come back soon because he's got the live feed. So yeah, but I know we've said it before, but this is history in the making. We've got fingers crossed. We don't want a repeat of the N1 scenario. We want this to fly, and hopefully, if we are successful, and as Paul said, what's going to happen in the future, this will inspire people to knuckle down on Artemis and get things moving again. I mean, I've got my own thoughts about the Artemis project, but it's. My problem is it's far too infrequent. It's when you're launching every sort of like 2 years, you're not going to achieve that much.
I mean,
and when you build, sorry, Michael,
talking a bit, the shuttle was at one time supposed to be launching once every 2 or 3 weeks or once a month, whatever. But ultimately, if you think about it, the shuttle had nowhere to go until they started building a space station. Now they've built the space station, they're talking about decommissioning it in a few years' time.
Yeah.
But now they've actually got somewhere to go to, i.e. the moon.
Yes.
Exactly,
Can you hear me now?
I did
Can you hear me
see...
now?
Sorry. Yeah, we can hear you now, Andy.
About that. My PC seems to be playing up a bit today. Sorry, go on.
I did see a question somewhere from Karen English. Oh, it says, where do they source all that methane from? I don't know. Probably plug into a few cows. And one for the kids there. Plus, why methane and not hydrogen? Ah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
hydrogen is dangerous, isn't it?
Hydrogen is dangerous, and also hydrogen is the smallest molecule it's possible to get, which means that the molecules are so small it can slip through any tiny hole. And as NASA have found out with the SLS, hydrogen is very difficult to stop leaking because the molecules are very small. So apart from the fact that it's highly explosive, as the passengers of many airships in the past found out, it's not an easy thing to deal with, and also methane is much cheaper than hydrogen.
Yeah, the cryogenics get easier, don't they? If you've got bigger molecules, it's
Yes.
Yeah, I mean the methane can be naturally made. I was being flippant where they say they plugged it into cows.
In Texas.
But the actual methane is, if I remember rightly, I think they still do. It's made off site and then it's tankered in. And I think it was the same with the hydrogen for the SLS. But I know they're talking about making a building, or they were talking about a Boca Chica building a methane production site. So, but I do believe it's tanked in, unless they've already done that. I mean, I haven't been following.
They have actually got an old natural gas plant on the site at Boca Chica, which was there when they bought the land. And yes, you're right, Daz, there was a plan to use that, but they seem to have dropped that idea now, and they are tankering everything.
Yeah. I think what happened there is the company that originally owned those oil wells, which as they were, they piped up, even though they weren't using them. They piped up and they were demanding stupid money and things like that. And also they were talking about virtually closing down Boca Chica because that was their property. So, yeah, I think that was all shelved in the end because I think they paid them off. That's how it usually works over
Absolutely.
there.
Can we just say hello to Roger, who's now joined us? Hello, Roger. How are you?
Hi, Roger.
Hello.
How are you?
Hello, Roger.
Oh, hello, Roger.
Nice of you to join us. And also, can I just say a very quick thank you to those people who have already bought us coffees. Much appreciated, guys. Thank you very much. As I said, the money that you give us goes to help keeping Space Oddities going and will enable us to do bigger and better things in the future. So thank you for that. We're now looking at the SpaceX live coverage, and as you can see, the white bands on the rocket, that is where there's ice on the surface of the rocket from the incredibly cold cryogenic fuels, and those white bands have been creeping slowly up both the booster and the Starship. By the look of it, they're not long off being fully fueled now, so we just have to hope that continues. Everything is going to plan. We're now looking at a launch in about 21 minutes, and we're all getting very excited. Are you excited, Roger?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, this is an historic day for space travel. Whatever happens today, this day will go in the history books, and let's hope it goes into the history books for all the right reasons.
Just noticed, Andy, in the comments, Mike Astronaut Cymru says a boat has wandered into the exclusion zone, and the Coast Guard are dealing with it. And Ian put, shoot it down. What planet are you on, Ian? The boats float in the air. I think torpedoes would be better. And also, Daydream Astra, that's Rachel, her class are now watching, and they all want to say a big hello. So, hello, year one at Southfield Primary.
Hello, year one at Southfield Primary, and be good for your teacher. No messing about. And we're very happy to have you all with us, Southfield Primary. Yeah. It's great for you to share this day, and we hope that in years to come you'll look back on this day and remember this momentous launch of the Starship for the first time. So thank you all for being here, and Southfield Primary. If you do have any questions, tell Rachel, and we'll answer your questions, and we're very happy to do that. Everybody here saying,
and when you're remembering the launch, remember the old men that commentated on it.
Space Oddities. Yes, absolutely. Yes. So yes, Steve says hello, Southfield Primary. Kevin says hello. Mike says hello. Minidoc says, my 6-year-old son Jackson is really enjoying your footage of astronauts floating over no gravity. He asked me, how do they get oxygen? Well, they're inside the space station, and there is oxygen inside the space station, which is pumped into the space station, so they can breathe without the need to have space helmets and oxygen tanks. So it's an oxygen environment inside the International Space Station. Ian says, hello, Southfield. So Southfield, lots of people saying hello to you. So you're very welcome. Let's hear those questions, because I'm sure you've got some. So let's hear them.
I'd like to say as well, Andy, if I may.
No. You may not.
Having a school class watch us takes me back to when I was at school a long time ago. I remember in the Apollo days, we the teachers managed to get hold of a really big 26-inch TV.
Gosh.
God, that must have been huge.
Wheel it into the school hall, and on our breaks we were able to watch the Apollo broadcasts.
That's
so
fantastic.
That was good of them.
I was going to say, a television that big, the valve must be in as big as the Starship.
A 26-inch television then was best carried by 2 or 3 people, not one.
That's right, yeah.
And a forklift.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I remember during the Apollo era, my fourth form primary teacher used to bring what kids we used to call a transistor radio into
Oh
the
wow!
class, and he let us listen to all the live coverage on the radio.
Yeah.
We didn't have a TV to watch it on, but we listened to it all on the radio. And Henry has asked, where are they launching the rocket from? They are launching the rocket, Henry, from a place called Boca Chica in Texas, in the United States, down there on the Gulf Coast. So they're launching from the United States. And this is where they make the rockets as well. But they're also building a launch site at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and they'll be launching from there as well in the future. Even SpaceX haven't said exactly what the plan is, but probably they're going to build the rockets here at Boca Chica and then move them by sea to Florida. That looks like the current plan. Yeah. So you're looking at Boca Chica at the moment. You see on the left, to the left of the rocket, you see some of the ground equipment, 2 big tanks, and they've got, I think, was it 6 big tanks there, which store water, methane, and liquid oxygen. And Henry, you're very welcome. Any other questions? Please ask them. That's what we're here for. So please ask your questions. And yes, so there's a lot of ground equipment there. Boca Chica is way out on a peninsula where there's only a tiny village of people. And it's an ideal place to launch a rocket from, of course, because there aren't many people around. And of course, if you've got something this experimental where you're never sure what's going to happen, it is dangerous. Space travel is a dangerous business. And the fewer people you have around, the better, really. So there's a small village of Boca Chica. SpaceX bought up most of the houses there. So there aren't actually that many people living there anymore. Michael?
Yes, so was Boca Chica a rocket test site originally?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
It's basically a retirement village.
Oh, okay.
So SpaceX built everything here from scratch. And if you only go back 2 years, or maybe even 3, they just had a couple of tents building nose cones, and that's all that they had. And they've built it up over the last couple of years into this manufacturing and launch site. Wow. You see on the screen the Starship, and either side of it, with its arms open, are the so-called chopsticks. Yes. And these in the future will be used to catch the big rocket, the booster. And SpaceX have more or less said now they're not going to use it to catch the Starship. That's going to land on its own. So they're probably going to put legs back on it as it had originally. Yeah. But those chopsticks, they will get hold of the booster when it descends towards the ground and lower it gently to the ground. They do use those chopsticks at the moment to lift the Starship up on top of the booster, which is where it is at the moment. And it's an immense engineering achievement to be able to lift that enormous Starship up and position it with precision on top of the rocket. There you see the view looking over what they had originally. This is an old photo. There you are. You see they just had one tent and it was a very small area. But of course, now look at it. And we're now looking at it as it is today. So they've been very busy at Boca Chica, and there we are. So we're looking at coming up to 14 minutes before launch, and we're getting very excited here. This is, I'm going to say it again, this is such a momentous day in the history of space travel. If the Starship works, we will have a vehicle to explore the solar system with, And Karen says the kids believed you, Daz, when you said that they plugged them into cows. So she says I wasn't going to correct them.
They do have plenty of cows in Texas, don't they? So
yes, that's right.
I'll just another comment from Space Bonds Productions. There's another reason for using methane-based engine is would it be easier to create methane on Mars? Than hydrogen. So that's another reason for them, because ultimately the Starship will be going to Mars.
Okay, we've got an update. There were pressure issues detected. Possible they will still launch today, but they are now treating this as a wet dress rehearsal rather than.
Oh, right.
Oh, darn it.
Oh, darn it. Well, let's hope they can resolve those pressure issues. The countdown is still proceeding, though. They're still on 30 minutes counting. Thank you for that very much, Mike, for letting us know.
Sounds a bit like SLS, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm just wondering. We were talking earlier about the possibility of moving this to the Kennedy Space Center, and I wonder if they would actually use Launch Complex 39A, which SpaceX do currently use, because that was actually first used on the 9th of November 1967 by Apollo 4. There's a huge history of that launch pad. Most of the Apollos went from it, not all.
Yes, absolutely. It's unlikely they will use 39A because that is the launch pad they use to launch astronauts to the space station. And what NASA are worried about is if there were an explosion that damaged it, they wouldn't be able to launch astronauts. So there is another pad. Is it 40 or 41? I can't remember.
40 is nearby, isn't it? It's got the 4 towers around it. Yeah.
Yes, they're going to refurbish that, if you like, and use that instead, apparently.
So weren't they building a separate launch site at 39?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. It's all going ahead. They've already built one tower there.
Okay.
Like the one we're seeing today that the Starship is launching from. They've laid the foundations for a second, and the components are nearby. So they're actually going to build 2 towers there. And launch from there primarily.
Okay.
The countdown is still going ahead.
It is. That's surprising, isn't it?
It is. Yes, they are now creating 11 minutes for the launch. We are watching SpaceX coverage of the launch. We're not seeing anything of the vehicle itself at the moment, but as we get towards maybe 5 minutes before the launch, if that indeed is going to happen, then we will turn you over to the SpaceX live stream so that you can hear SpaceX rather than listening to our inane chatter about what's going on. So although it looks like there may be fuel pressure issues, the countdown is still going ahead. So that's a good sign.
It is indeed. And they just showed a little map there for those who are asking about where they were launching from. And it's actually in the very southern part of Texas where the launch is to the east, i.e. with the rotation of the Earth to get the benefit of that speed added on to what you need to get into orbit. And of course, it's over lots of water, which if there is a malfunction is a far better place than having over a populated area.
Absolutely.
The SpaceX live feed says 9 minutes 20 seconds now.
Right, that's right. Okay, we're a little bit behind here. There is a little bit of a time delay, as I think somebody mentioned earlier, between actual live and what you're seeing on the screen now, but it's only a few seconds. So we're just waiting to see whether the launch is going to proceed or whether they're going to put a hold on it. Let's fingers and legs crossed. Any other questions out there? Any questions, viewers? Please put them in your put them in the comments in the chat. And yes, Ian says Rick's back. We're still awaiting anything from SpaceX about this possible pressure issue. But at the moment,
he's never going to give it up.
No. Rick Ghastly. Yes. So the countdown is proceeding, and what a lovely sight that is to see that rocket fully fueled and awaiting liftoff. The tallest, most powerful rocket ever built is awaiting its liftoff, which, if all is going well, is going to happen in just under 9 minutes. So there you are. So they seem to be happy with what's happening anyway. They haven't actually put the countdown on hold.
They haven't said no yet, have they?
They haven't.
They've actually just said that they're going to go down to T-minus 10 seconds, and if the pressure is okay, they will launch. But they will go down to T-minus 10 seconds
Right.
And decide then.
Oh, it just said scrub. It just said scrub.
It has said scrub. Oh, has it?
Yeah. Mike Astronaut just said they've scrubbed it for today.
Oh,
that's very disappointing.
Let's wait and see, because
the countdown's still going.
Countdown is still going. So
yeah, well, they'll still take it down to the 10 seconds as a dress rehearsal.
Nice.
So yeah. Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Well, we'll have to do it all again tomorrow.
Indeed.
Well, they've got 2 more days this week where they've got road closures. When I did look at the weather for the next couple of days there, whereas today's nice and sunny, although we have got high altitude winds, it looks as though it's going to be a little bit cloudy. But we got a view of the engines now. Yeah. That's nice. I wouldn't want to be the bloke holding that camera.
Very good.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike, for keeping us informed.
I guess they'll be closing the chopsticks up then.
I guess they will.
And
yep. Oh, what a shame.
Well, it is the age we live in.
We'll just wait a little while, just see what they do.
We'll just wait and see what happens with the countdown.
Yeah.
I think it is one of those things that sort of lessons learned from the shuttle era that better safe than sorry sort of thing, and they're probably not quite prepared to take as many risks as used to be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Mike Aston. Sorry.
No, I was going to say.
So I was going to say. Oh. Sorry, Mike Astronaut says there's no launch today. Countdown will go to 0, but no launch. Down to 10. Yeah, down to 10
seconds. Yeah. Oh, it's a shame.
And Ian says he feels sorry for the kids watching. Indeed, we're really sorry, kids, if it turns out that they're not launching. Really sorry. But the backup day for the launch is tomorrow. So we'll go through all this again tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow. And hope you can join us again tomorrow. But let's wait and see what happens. You never know. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say a bit earlier, we talked about Artemis and how that's really on a very sort of slow mission cycle, which really sort of amounts to something like, Apollo's 4, 8, and 11. You might sort of say in just 3 missions, but over a longer period of time. And I can't help but feel actually that if the shuttle had been like that in the first place, it might still be with us, because I think there was that pressure to just do too much too quickly and cut corners, and that sadly led to accidents. That period of time when I think George W. Bush was actually very brave. After the Columbia incident, the report said the shuttle is unsafe, stop it. And he said, well, can we do it with such attention to safety that we can finish off the space station?
Yeah.
And they did all those missions, and even a Hubble mission in that as well. And I can't help but think if they had adopted that approach to safety in the first place, we might still have the shuttle, but that's not how it happened, and that's not where
but with the shuttle, again, you've got to look at the military aspect, and this is why they wanted the shuttle to fly so often, because it was going to be the main launch provider for all the military satellites. And they had cancelled a rocket that they'd already had planned to be built to deliver these satellites in favour of the space shuttle. But I think it was called the Triton or something like that, or Titan. But because the space shuttle started to slow down and have all its problems and things like that, that was one of the reasons for all the pressure. And of course, once you've had a couple of mistakes and people lost their lives, then there was no way that it could really continue as such. And that's one, of course, again, just moving on a little bit, that's why ULA originally was launched. as a company, because the United Launch Alliance, and that was again to cover military contracts, because to be quite honest, the ULA is a monopoly of the US government, and that was what it was all about. And of course, it was working wonderfully until the Russians all started doing their naughty things, and embargoes were put on them. NASA ULA lost their engines. And since then, they failed to put anything into space. Even though they're trying to build the Vulcan Centaur, the engines have been slow in coming up, and now they've got problems with the Centaur stage.
Yeah.
So, and this is unfortunately why they find themselves in problems. And so there's always two sides to this with NASA. You've got the private side, and then you've got the government side, which includes the military, unfortunately.
And of course, with the shuttle, the size of the shuttle was partly dictated by the.
They made it bigger, didn't they, for military?
They wanted the big payload bay to launch their satellites. Because if you think about it, a spy satellite is basically a Hubble looking the other way.
Indeed.
Right. There's an update from Mike Astronaut. It says a valve has frozen.
Right.
So it says, do they have to defuel now? And then you put no. It says no, a valve is frozen. So
that's a shame.
Yes, and it looks like a lot of venting going on now. So they're depressurizing the fuel, the fuel tanks, letting all that fuel out, as it were, and that's it. So that there definitely won't be a launch today, unfortunately. So sorry about that, folks. We knew this could happen. It's always a bit of a risky business.
Countdown installed at T-minus 40 seconds.
Right. Okay.
There's a new expression which I haven't heard before.
What's that?
Rapid unscheduled disassembly.
Oh, you haven't heard that, RUD?
Yeah, the RUD.
Fortunately, it hasn't happened, but
yeah. Yes, there hasn't been a RUD. Yes, they have held the countdown at 40 seconds. So I'm afraid that the launch will not happen today because of a valve problem, and I'm sure it's something they can fix quite easily. And presumably they will try again tomorrow, because that is the backup date for today. We will return tomorrow. But in the meantime, don't forget our normal Monday show at 8 p.m. UK time tonight. We'll be back later at 8 this evening to bring you more fun and frolics from the world of astronomy and space exploration. And we hope you can join us this evening for our normal Monday evening show. So I think really there's not much point in continuing, guys.
Let's stop to 40.
Yeah, shall we just listen into SpaceX for a brief moment and hear exactly what they're saying?
Down today, and that is going to scrub our launch attempts. But we are expecting a minimum of 48 hours in order to recycle. So be sure to keep an eye on our social channels, and we'll share information as soon as it becomes available. Until then, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
Oh, so they said
48 hours.
48 hours.
There will not be a launch tomorrow either, having said all that.
Yeah.
So we will keep you informed. Keep an eye on our Facebook page. Do remember to like and subscribe, because that really helps us grow the channel. So please like and subscribe. And just to recap, no launch today for the Starship because of a valve problem. No launch tomorrow because SpaceX say it's going to take at least 48 hours to recycle everything. So presumably they will try, I don't know, this week, next week, whenever.
Yeah, so they've got road closures till Wednesday, so they can do, if they can squeeze it in Wednesday, then it'll hopefully Wednesday. But just keep an eye on all the news just to make sure you don't miss anything, everybody. But we will be back hopefully on Wednesday.
Yes.
But we will see. We will see. Fingers crossed for the next time.
This evening at 8 o'clock for our normal Monday evening show. And I'm sorry for all the children watching that it's been a bit of a disappointment today. But this is the nature of space travel. I'm afraid these things happen. Technology fails from time to time, and that's it. So from us all at Space Oddities, from myself, from Michael, from Paul, from Roger, and would just like to bid you a very good afternoon. Thank you for being here. We do appreciate you being here, watching this with us. And we hope to see you back here at 8 o'clock this evening, UK time, for our Monday evening show. So until then, we'd like to say goodbye. Thank you for all the coffees that you've bought us. Much appreciated. And we will hopefully see you later back here at 8 o'clock UK time this evening. Yeah. So from all of us, say goodbye, guys.
Goodbye.
Bye, and hopefully see you Wednesday as well.
Hopefully. All right.
Wednesday or whenever,
And thank you all for your questions as well. Much appreciated. All right. Take care of yourselves. And from us.